Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking with Willamette Week City Hall and politics reporter Sophie Peel about the future of Portland's street response, especially now that its founding program manager, Robyn Burek, has resigned. Studies have shown that the roughly 2-year-old program has been successful in not only assisting people experiencing mental and behavioral health crises, but also reducing police and hospital intervention. In other words, Portland's street response is meeting all of its goals. But even still, funding for future operation and expansion is uncertain. And a quick note that during our conversation with Sophie Peel, Robyn Burek announced her resignation. So you will hear Sophie refer to Burek as the program manager of PSR in the following conversation. But as of this recording, a successor has yet to be named. It's Wednesday, July 5th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Sophie, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, I've been wanting to have you on for a while now because I feel like I've just been wanting to talk about the Portland street response for a bit now. And I know you've been doing a lot of deep diving into the situation around it. So I was wondering, why do you think the Portland street response, like the people who work at the Portland street response, feel like the city wants them to fail?
Gosh, I think that's a big question. And, we've done reporting on it. The Oregonian just put out a big piece on it a couple days ago, and there's sort of a lot of moving parts. But I think the gist of it is we have new leadership in office, and that new leadership is, I think, trickling down to the Fire Bureau. We've got a new interim, fire chief coming in who's going to replace Chief Sarah Boone, who was, appointed by Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. So if we back up a little bit, Portland Street Response was championed by Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. She's the first Black woman on Portland City Council. This program was sort of her baby, and it was really well liked. It was well received. And then last November, she was unseated by Commissioner Rene Gonzalez, who was backed in his election by the fire union, which, when the fire union does not back the existing commissioner in charge, that sort of says a lot about how, disenchanted they are by current leadership. So the fire union backs Commissioner Rene Gonzalez. And I think before he came into office, it was, there's sort of this big question about, well, is he going to stick with the fire union? Is he going to answer to their requests? Is he going to stick by this program that, is successful in many ways, but was sort of the baby and the pride and joy of his predecessor and the legacy of his predecessor. And I think, it's only been 5-6 months since he's been in office, but I think just little things that are sort of trickling out show that there's less dedication to preserving this program.
Less investment, right? Just from everyone around, because it was literally, what I'm hearing is, just so you know, Hardesty didn't just come up with this program. She actually looked at other cities that had similar programs that were working. Denver has STAR, the Support Team Assisted Response, very similar to the program that we launched. And Hardesty brings in, Fire Chief Sarah Boone, and she doesn't get endorsed again. And now there is this, her baby is kind of just floating in this fire bureau, with absolutely no one really invested in keeping it alive. Is that what we're trying to get to? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think Chief Sarah Boone I think she did a good job of remaining pretty neutral. She was an appointee by Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. She was a friend of Hardesty's by many accounts. But I don't think she ever, and when I say it was the fire union that had endorsed Gonzalez, not the Fire Bureau. So that wasn't a Boone, that's very much rank and file endorsed Rene Gonzalez, not necessarily Fire Bureau leadership, even though there is somewhat of a trickle down effect. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's really, I kind of hesitate to use the word champion because I think it's really overused, but Rene Gonzalez, I wouldn't call him a champion of Portland street response, and the Oregonian had made a couple, points in their article that, one, there is federal funding available for Portland street response, and Rene Gonzalez and incoming Chief Ryan Gillespie, haven't figured out exactly how to access that funding or how to tap into it. So there seems to be a bit of a lackluster effort on that part. And earlier this year, obviously, Rene Gonzalez had banned the distribution of tents, which is one of PSR's main things, is they hand out tents, they hand out food. And then incoming Chief Ryan Gillespie had put a freeze on all new purchases of food and other supplies. And so it seems like slowly Portland Street Response's kind of arsenal of tools that they can use to help is being depleted and not replenished.
So what I read, Sophie, is in order for it to get funding, federal funding, they have to go 24/7. They have to be available like an emergency service, and they haven't been able to launch that service because they're understaffed. And they're
Right.
understaffed because Gonzalez and Gillespie are not planning on hiring anyone new.
Yeah, there are 6 vacancies. I think the Oregonian had reported there's 6 vacancies, and they have no intention that we know of filling those vacancies. And it's a small staff. 6 doesn't sound like a lot, but I think total they have 58 people. And so 6 actually, really, it's like it matters in that sense. So, yeah, there's a lot to be seen, but I think we are seeing the slow disintegration of support within Gonzalez, if not intentionally, just by neglect almost.
And why would they want to see? This is the question. Why would they want to neglect a program that's working? That the numbers have come in,
Mm-hmm. I think that there's a lot of people, and I think that, there's always this kind of yearly report by Portland State University where they look at the kind of efficacy of Portland Street Response. And I think there's a lot of people that would say those results are, shining and they're fantastic. And then I think there's others that would say, well, is this really working? Is handing out supplies working? It's diverting, 4% of calls that would potentially go to the police bureau, but is there something better that we can do? And I think Gonzalez, and I don't want to speak for him necessarily, but I think he thinks this program is misplaced under the Fire Bureau. I think he thinks of the Fire Bureau as responding to fires, even though that has really become not their function in recent years, just because of the increase in homelessness and addiction and mental health crises. But he wants to offload this program. I mean, I think that's the gist of it. I think he doesn't want it within the Fire Bureau. And I think that's partly because he does feel like Portland Street Response has sort of been infiltrated by more of an activism tone and a homeless advocate tone rather than mental health practitioners. And I think those both exist in that program.
And let's talk about that real quick, because you said Rene Gonzalez wants to offload, but yet he had an opportunity. It came up hey, Rene, you don't want this. It's clear you don't want this within the Fire Bureau. They were hey, let's move this to the Community Safety Division. Mm-hmm. Fire officials, commissioner, senior staff, they all supported the idea. But Gonzalez just kind of was no, we're not going to do that. So that further fueled, I feel that sentiment within the Portland Street Response. Not only does he not want us, he wants to keep us and tank us. Why do you think Gonzalez said no to that move?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to that. I think Gonzalez is too politically savvy to think that keeping a very popular program and then intentionally tanking it, is going to be good for his political reputation. I do not think he is that unsophisticated. So that to me doesn't make sense because, again, it is a popular program. If he keeps it and just suffocates it, that doesn't look good for him either. So I don't think it was that simple. And again, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but I am very hesitant to say that was the intentional kind of machinations behind it.
Okay, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, the division within the Portland Street Response and the Fire Bureau. So I feel like there is a lack of direction of what Portland Street Response is within the Bureau. What is the Portland Street Response supposed to be doing? Because I feel like half of, from what the reports that we're getting in, even the Portland Street Response doesn't even know within their own ranks, are we an advocacy group for the houseless or are we an emergency response group?
I think there is that divide internally. I mean, we got some records a couple weeks ago that, showed an exit interview by a top supervisor who very clearly laid out this. There's also an internal divide too. I don't think it's nearly as contentious as the divide between like the Fire Bureau and Portland Street as a whole, like sort of the political divide.
Right.
But even internally, I think there's real confusion about like what is our purpose? Are we supposed to go out there and hand out supplies, or are we really just supposed to go out there and soothe people and prevent something much worse from happening?
Well, journalists from the Oregonian, Nicole Hayden and Shane Dixon Kavanaugh, a few days ago just printed one of the most like comprehensive takes and like looks into what's going on with the Portland Street response within the city level and the Fire Bureau. So really the two main characters here are Renee Gonzalez and incoming Fire Chief Ryan Gillespie. So they got a quote from Renee, and I just wanted to bring that up, where he's quoted as talking about the Portland Street response. He said, "We've got a shiny object over here that gets tremendous love and attention. And we've got a whole rest of our organization collectively public safety that has felt like at times it's not getting the attention that the shiny object has."
I wrote that one down too. That's the one quote that I grabbed from that, just because it seems like sour grapes.
Exactly. It just feels like, I'm like, are you jealous are you jealous that this Hardesty program worked?
To give Renee a bit of credit, I think everyone sees the Fire Bureau and the police bureau. It's normal functions that are expected to work. They're not shiny objects because they've always been part of basic city functions. So I think they are just expected to work. But I do think Renee has a point when like our Fire Bureau isn't working. I mean, it is in dire straits. We're spending our budget sheet is all out of whack. We're spending way too much time on overtime. We don't have enough firefighters. They're not being used properly, essentially. We're sending full-on rigs to someone who's like, isn't acting right for various reasons. I mean, the Fire Bureau is broken. So he's got a real, I think, I do think that quote is like a little bit of sour grapes. And at the same time, he's got a point that like a much larger function, not that it's more important, but someone that has, or a bureau that has like 600 workers versus 60, it's broken. And I think just because there is this sense among us that like the Fire Bureau just does what it does, like it just works and it responds to our fires, we do sort of ignore that like this bureau is in real turmoil. They're not responding to fires quickly enough. There's attrition there. Like we're not staffed up. So I do think he has a point that like it's nice to take this kind of pinnacle program and say, look how great it's working. While at the same time, we aren't really paying attention to the Fire Bureau. So even though I do think that quote like definitely has some sourness to it, I do think he has a point.
But why didn't Gonzalez let the program go then? It's like, if it's this program that's like taking all this money from the Fire Bureau, you think the smart thing to do would just be like, all right, who wants it? Yeah, take it. You deal with all the people and their feelings that we don't want to deal with, and all these, we don't want to deal with this. We have a different culture here at the Fire Bureau. We're a bunch of bros or whatever it is. Like, we don't want to deal with this. Fine. But that to me is the question. That's why, like, I want to talk to anyone. It's just like, why won't he let it go? Why are they holding on to it if they're not going to expand it? And if they don't, I mean, according to the Oregonian, this blew my mind. Gonzalez hasn't even been on a ride-along to the Portland Street response.
I read that, and that was really interesting to me because, he's doing it's sort of typical for the new fire chief to like go to every single fire station within the first year, do a little tour. But I think that was a much more telling tidbit than I think a lot of people realized, was that he hadn't been on a ride along. I guess there's other things that could have, I guess I could see a scenario where Portland Street Response is like very protective of their clients, and maybe they didn't offer that, but that stuck out to me for sure.
If we are to keep Portland Street Response going, like, what kind of support will it need from the city and the county to be successful?
Well, I think if it is possible to get federal resources, and there's always federal resources available, they're not necessarily easy to access, but they are available. We got to tap into those. I mean, I think it's, gets into a much bigger discussion of like, how is a city's budget best used, and where are we wasting, and where can we shave off? Because Portland Street Response budget isn't large. I mean, 10 million, like in the span of the city budget, it's very small. I mean, like sometimes I look at the millions, like I think I saw Portland Parks and Recreation, like $3 million project to like, build a small bridge in some, I don't even know what park. I mean, like sometimes you look at these budgets and it's like, man, 10 million doesn't seem like an impossible get. But again, I do think, money is usually at the heart of issues. And I think if there's federal funding available, why on earth are we not fighting for that funding?
Exactly. And it seemed from the Oregonian report that no one within the Fire Bureau, the Portland Street Response, knew how to get that money.
It was sort of a shrug, which would mean to me that if there's not the knowledge of how to get it, it means that you haven't done your homework and you haven't figured out what it would take. Because if you know how to not get it, then you can articulate it,
Yeah. Well, I do believe there was an addition that OHA is stepping in and now trying to help them find that money, which is great. The Oregon Health Authority, trying to find some federal funding. But yeah, I mean, this is important to me anyhow. Like, I want to get to the bottom of this just because being told that Portland Street Response works, that it's actually benefiting everyone involved. It's helping the police. It's helping our failing emergency infrastructure system. Like, let's not mince words. Like, Portland, when you call 911, it's going to be a while, And if you're calling 911 because you're seeing someone have a mental crisis, having somebody that gets there, and it doesn't take 40 minutes, I feel like that's necessary for where we are right now. And why wouldn't we support a program that is, according to all the reports, doing a great job? What do you think? Do you think it's going to stick around, this program?
I just think it's too early to say. I don't know. I don't really want to. I don't know. It's not a good answer, but I don't know.
It's too bad, Sophie, because I was going to record you, and then if it failed, I'd be like, remember when you said it wouldn't, Sophie? And then it'd just be like, gotcha.
That idiot.
No.
It's a gotcha show now.
Yeah, totally. We just got to record it. Record this. Yeah, gotcha. Exactly. It's just a lot of echo. Well, Sophie, thanks for looking into this. Thank you for keeping us, abreast with what's going on. And also, if you're listening to this and you're like, I have so many more questions, please Google it. Look at Sophie's article. She goes in depth a lot more, especially with the county and their interactions with the Portland Street Response. And also check out the article on the Oregonian that Nicole Hayden and Shane Dixon Kavanaugh just put out. And Sophie, if any of my wild takes turn out to be true, will you please come back on and just say that out loud?
Absolutely.
Claudia, you were right.
Ding, 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 ding.
Great.
We just got to get more sound effects going.
Next time you're on, Sophie, we're going to have them all on deck.
Okay.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. If you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend or leave us a great review. It'll really help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.